And Miranda's yelling at me for not drinking water.
You'd yell at him too. If yes.
Yes, if I don't drink enough water, crazy things happen to blood sugar. I was surprised to find out how impactful and influential water is to, just everybody every day, but especially to diabetics. If I don't drink enough water, I just whoosh, 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 I go up and down.
And I did not yell at him. I gently asked him how many bottles of water he drank today.
Yep. She used that sweet southern voice that's so nice and pleasant, but right behind it is, I'm going to hit you with this clipboard if you give me the wrong answer.
No.
Or make you drink.
I was miles away from him when I
that's true.
Gently asked.
Yeah, but she has a good arm. Don't let her fool you.
Well, actually, Sports and I never agreed.
Nah. No, that's good though.
I mean, look at these arms. Look at these arms. Yeah.
She can throw. Anyway, why are we doing?
I have no idea. Why are we arguing about my puny little arms? They can't throw. Trust me on that one.
So anyway, yeah, it's 106 or something. I thought it was going to be cool, but y'all said it was going to be. Aspen said it was going to be cool this weekend.
Cooler being the key word.
Yeah.
Cooler than the 108 that it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And that it is.
Yeah, that it is.
Yes.
Oh, big announcement. Miranda is going to be a Sabbath school teacher again.
Yes, it'll be fun. But this time I actually get to teach adults.
Yeah, not the children. She's done every level, I think, of Sabbath school.
Yeah.
And now she gets an adult class.
Yeah.
They asked her to do it every fourth Sabbath.
In my old age, I get to
Wisdom
teach adults.
Coming out. That's what's happening here.
Yeah, I did teach or lead a handful of adult classes, but it was like a Wednesday night.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember that.
Type thing, so. Yeah.
Yep. And, so.
Only because they had a couple people quit and move. And so, they were desperate.
They were not desperate.
They were.
It was funny, though, when we were at this guy's house, they had all the Sabbath school leaders, and their spouse there, and we were all sitting around, and I don't know how we're talking about. And then somebody said something, well, what about the women? What about them teaching? And it just got, and all the guys looking around like either ashamed they never thought of it, or something. It just got really quiet for a second, and then I think it was Russ like, oh yeah, how come we have, and it was just a really funny moment.
Notice that the women were not part of that conversation. It was one of those, times where you're over to someone's place for Sabbath lunch, and it was actually meeting as a Sabbath school teachers meeting, lunch and meeting, and directly after lunch, the group just divided up. Men in the living room to talk about things, and women in the dining room to talk about other things.
Yeah, I will say me and Dean were the last two to join the group because we were over talking on the women's side, and then I think Dean went over there, and then finally John or somebody said, yes, Brett, we're starting. But I think I was the last to join. Aspen, here.
Well, you guys may have been the last to join, but we were the two ladies who were considered to
teach.
Yeah.
So and
I'm sure the other ladies could, but they're not interested. I don't think they're interested.
No, I don't think anybody really. Any of the other wives want it. It's just interesting because when the guys get up, they sit and they teach, and their wives sit right next to them and don't really say much. And here comes Miranda now, going to be the leader.
A leader.
So anyway, so it's been interesting. We had something that we haven't had for a while here in Texas. Last night it was a storm.
Yeah, we haven't had a thunderstorm, like a decent one, in quite a while. I looked at the radar, it looked like we were just going to get some rain, but woke up whatever time it came across, and I was like, oh, yeah, there's a storm. Well, some thunder and lightning. I went back to sleep. But Brett said, now this was very odd, it blew over the trash cans. And you would think, well, so it blew over some trash cans. And they've been sitting out there for 2 years now, And there have been some windy thunderstorms.
Yeah.
And tornadoes passing by north or south of us. And those trash cans just sat there like the same place they always sit. And all of a sudden this morning, ours are the only trash cans, so we're just like...
I blame Miranda. It's all her fault. Would you like to know why it's all your fault?
Why?
Because when I went out, ours were the only cans that were... I mean, they were not just blown over. They were blown out into the road and down the road a little bit. And nobody else's was. So either everybody got up really early to move their trash cans, or it was just our trash cans, and it's Miranda's fault. Because in the fall... And it doesn't matter. We were here in Texas. We were here in Lincoln, Nebraska. I believe maybe even in Maryland, but I don't remember that far back about this. We're the only one that gets all the leaves blown out to our front door.
It's true. It's happened my entire life. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Every other house here, clear path to the door. Ours has a pile of leaves.
Yep, it's true. It's the story of my life. Yeah. No, I'm going to blame Brett. The reason that ours blew away and other people's didn't is probably because Brett faithfully takes the trash down so it's not being heavy, and ours were empty and lightweight. Maybe other people's trash cans were just full of trash.
Yeah, that might be it. Yeah, because we also... I don't know why we're telling you all this, because it doesn't really matter. But I'm sure everyone else uses the nice little regular trash cans with the little kitchen trash bag. We got a 45-gallon thing here.
Yes.
And it was just, I don't know, we did it on a whim, because there was
Yeah, Brett was taking the trash out of the regular size, 13-gallon or whatever it is, all the time.
All the time.
Like every day, probably. And so I asked him if he wanted me to go ahead and pick up a big trash can.
Yeah.
And he said, yes.
It's really kind of cool because you take it out once a week, maybe, twice on, like if they pick up trash on Tuesday, so, it's out on Tuesday. If you put a new bag in on Tuesday, you're probably not taking it out again till Friday or Saturday, Sunday maybe, and then, you might get, if it's an especially busy week, I guess, then we get 2 bags in there, but that's about it, and it's kind of interesting. I like the big can better. It's like one trip out, take the trash can down to the end. Anyway.
Okay. Now that we've bored people to tears and they've all left us.
Yeah, telling you all this random information. Yeah. Well, I gave you the intro. I said we had a storm. Isn't that where we're starting?
Yes. So after we had the storm last night, I got up this morning. It was about 7:30 when I came out here. I opened the door with such anticipation of the storm having cooled it down, and you would get a fresh breeze or something. Oh.
And if you live in a really hot place, or if you don't live in a really hot place, you really don't understand or appreciate the anticipation of it's cooled down because of the rain. It's like, oh yes, it's going to be cooler because of it.
Yeah. So I opened the door, and sometimes you need to step out past the house a little bit, right? So I got out into the open space, and there wasn't a whiff of any cool air. It was hot and humid and still, as if it had never stormed.
Yep.
And so I came back inside very disappointed.
Yeah.
So honestly, this is the first year of my life that I am ready for summer to be over. The first year of my life I have been anticipating fall. My entire life I have been a favorite season of the year is spring. I love it because everything turns green and pretty flowers and all that kind of stuff. And I used to really enjoy gardening, so that was fun to start up all that. But this year, I am ready for fall, and I'm going to enjoy the cooler weather.
Yeah,
a lot.
Which will probably last a week, and then we'll go straight into winter. The way our luck with weather's been.
Yeah. But also, I'm always ready to get rid of the winter coats. Those things are heavy to wear. And I'm tired of being cold. I lived in Alaska for 10 years, and I enjoy the warm weather. We lived 5 years in Vegas. I didn't mind those hot summers at all. But this year, it has drug on.
Yeah, a long time.
A long time, yes.
I used to not like South Carolina when I lived there because it was hot and humid. And so you'd, take a shower and you get dressed, and when you walk out of the house, you get your second shower because it's so humid. And I I can't say I've been this, not miserable, but I've been this like, boy, I do not like this since I was a kid. You know, and I just didn't like the hot, humid, and now this last summer really, the summer before a little, but really this last summer has been, I do not like this heat. Mm-hmm. Vegas didn't really bother me that much.
No, it was drier.
Yeah. But anyway, so much for the weather report.
Yes. So, how I'm starting to see fall instead of how I used to. Used to be, it was like, oh, it's sad. Everything just dries up and dies for the winter, and I like everything growing and such in the spring. And yet I realize now that, fall is a time for, while everything in the spring and summer is growing, in the fall is when you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor if you've gardened. It's the time to take all those tomatoes you grew and turn them into marinara sauce for the winter, or maybe the corn you throw it into the freezer, or if you have apples, you turn them into applesauce. And so it is a time for that, which there is certainly, you need that in our life cycles as well. As a break also for myself, from trying to keep my few plants. I have not gardened here, which is a good thing. But I do have a handful of pots out there that Brett was kind enough to water for me this summer because, well, in part because some red wasps started showing up.
Yes, big ones.
And yes, big buzzy insects, and I don't agree. And so Brett was watering the plants for me, which is nice. But now he's back to school, so I'm back out throwing some water on the plants every now and again. So there's that. And also, we had grasshoppers this summer, like none
unreal.
Other.
Yeah, that was different too.
Yeah. So
our first summer we didn't. I think maybe one or two of them. But boy, they were like not swarming, but they were big suckers.
Yeah, big ones. And so what's interesting about the grasshoppers is they don't want to eat the plants that you're just so about. They want to eat your favorite plants.
Yeah, it's like they get together and have a team meeting and what do you think is the favorite plant here? All right, everybody, over there.
Yeah. So the nice thing about fall is while you've worked hard over the spring and the summer, getting things to grow, in the fall you get to enjoy the fruits of your labor and take a bit of a rest from all that work that you were doing.
And avoid all things pumpkin spice. Don't like the pumpkin spice. Pumpkin spice milkshake, pumpkin spice latte, pumpkin spice candles, pumpkin spice gas for your car. Everything's pumpkin spice.
Yeah, anyway, so the first time in my life, I am going to truly enjoy fall. But you know what? I got to hand it to Texas. For one thing, I'm used to living in places where there's really great turnout of wildflowers and such in the spring, and a little over the summer and such, but by fall, that's it. The wildflowers are gone. And yet, the wildflowers over the spring and through part of the summer this year were fantastic. And of course, during the real heat of the summer, they up and disappeared. But now that it's fall, it's great. We're getting another crop of whatever fall wildflowers are around here, and it's really pretty to see the fields start to blossom up again with what's blooming.
Yeah, I want to see the sunflowers.
Yes, and also sunflowers are in bloom, and there are farms apparently within driving distance from here, sunflower farms. So we're going to take off some Sabbaths and enjoy those and share those with you in the next month or so.
I was going to see some waterfall that we found online, but we asked our Sabbath school class who all have lived here for 100 years, and none of them ever heard of it.
Yeah,
like,
it
what?
was kind
Water?
of interesting.
I don't think so.
Yeah.
Like, no, this thing's huge and layers and that.
Yeah, they have a picture of it online. It's
Yeah, not happening.
Okay, so our thought for the day, our theme for the day, pride has no perfection, therefore it requires us to live out our own perfection. Humility, on the other hand, is nothing but utter perfection, perfect perfection. And so this last week, I was texting with my youngest son again, Colby, about gardening and hydroponic gardening. And he asked me some questions again, and which I really, once again, wasn't really able to answer. But he said he had chosen to garden indoors because he could control the climate that way. Outdoors, obviously, you cannot control the weather. Basically, who knows what storm or drought or heat or cold is going to come along and do something to your plants, or what disease just kind of rolls on in, or once again, grasshoppers, right? There's not that much you can do to control the weather like that. So too, we cannot control what goes on around the outside of us. We can't control what people say, what they do, and yet we can, in a sense, control what goes on the inside of us. Granted, we have to ask for help from God, but it is God that gives us peace. But despite our inability to control what goes on outside of us.
Yep. That was my part. Yep. In recovery, one of the things we do in 12-step recovery from addiction is that, we try to get people to just come into the program about what can you really control in your life, because a lot of people try to control this, try to control that, try to control people, try to control their job, and it's the idea that you don't have control. Control is all an illusion. You don't have control over anything. The only thing you really have control over is your freedom of choice. That's it.
Yeah, how you are going to react.
How you're going to react to things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So our text for the day: be ye sober and vigilant, for your enemy the devil goes about as a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. And that's 1 Peter 5:8. So how does he seek to devour us? The same way he devoured Eve in the Garden of Eden, with pride so subtle that she didn't even recognize it. Pride required her to do and to have in order to be, and it devoured her. She may have eaten the fruit, but it devoured her, swallowed her up into the great abyss of seeking perfection. Oh, this is not quite the same.
Oh, it's not?
Oh, I meant turning my pages isn't quite the same as scrolling.
Yes. Through. Yes,
but honestly, I like to hold my words.
We're going low tech now.
Them, yes. Yes. So, okay, now the problem is, in order to be perfect, we keep adding stuff to do and have for our lives to be perfect. And we get so busy doing that we don't have what it is we're really seeking, right? And that is peace. Peace always seems to elude our best efforts to make our life perfect. It seems like when I get busiest, I keep adding more things to my life because life isn't perfect. So I just do this thing here and then that thing over there and line up all these perfect things, or all these things that are going to make my life perfect. If I can accomplish all of those and more, then my life will be perfect and I will have some peace, right? But that's never how it works.
No.
Ever.
No.
So pride keeps us reliant on self for peace. Pride also keeps us under the illusion we must do something ourselves in order to be perfect. I remember talking to someone in the past who mentioned that they didn't want to feel helpless. And I thought, well, I know how that feels lately, because as we get older, our life catches up with us. Our need to not feel helpless, therefore we live life not asking for help, catches up with us. It catched it up with me, because eventually, you're lifting stuff and doing stuff that you shouldn't, and finally your back's like, no, I'm done with that. I'm done. You're going to take a break, or that's it. And so, if we don't rest, rest allows for healing, and so anyways, we don't like to be helpless. I don't like to ask for help, but notice the end result is pain, not peace.
We could tell many stories.
Many, yes.
But we won't.
But we won't.
But we could.
Right.
But we won't.
But we already told you like a 30 minutes of the weather report. I mean, this is not the Brett and Miranda weather show.
You know what's interesting about being helpless? You know,
What's that?
is that it is like one of the first steps, you know, to being able to come to a spiritual experience, come to, you know, Jesus, come to God, is to recognize your need. You have to recognize your need first. And it's interesting, this is probably 15 years ago. I don't know that it's changed much, but a while back. If you think about the Adventist Church, you know, one of the things that we used to be known for was missions. We, you know, give your missionary dollars to support the, you know, building of schools and churches in faraway distant lands. And, you know, you're always thinking, you know, from here in North America, being like, oh, we're going to send missionaries to all over the world to spread the word because people need to hear about Jesus. And it's just kind of in your head here. That's, you know, we do that. We send missionaries out. But it was a while back where they did an evaluation. The church was doing this evaluation of like where in the world needed the most missionaries, where the church was not growing, where it was shrinking, you know, where there was not. And South America, where it's just where we send our mission trips, right? We send kids to, you know, Peru and Brazil and South America and the jungles. And they were actually organizing, sending missionaries to North America, because North America in the world was where the church was the most losing members, no growth, and if you had just evaluated by numbers, North America was the biggest mission field in the world. And so these places where we normally think, oh, we need to send missionaries there, we're like, we need to send missionaries to these guys. And one of the reasons, you know, they think about that is because, you know, in North America there's so much wealth, there's so much thing that a lot of people just don't, you know, why do I need God? Why do I need it? I've got money, I've got my car, I've got my job, I've got I don't have a need really. And that was preventing kind of spiritual experiences from happening, because you have to be, we don't like to say we need help. We don't like to say we're helpless. We don't like to say I need God to. Yeah.
Yeah. So humility is perfection, and humility brings us to the point to be able to recognize our helplessness and admit that we need help. So picture yourself standing there as a little lamb in God's green pastures, standing next to your good shepherd, and you hear the lion roar. What do? Do you run off to fight the lion? Or do you look at your good shepherd and you tell him, you can't do that on your, I can't fight the lion. I need you to fight the lion for me. So one will destroy you and the other will give you peace.
One what?
One choice will destroy you. Deciding, if you're the little lamb and you decide to go fight the lion on your own.
I'm the little lamb. Maybe I don't want to be the lamb. Maybe I want to be the lion. Roar, 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 roar.
Remember who has the clipboard.
That's from a skit that Aspen and I used to do. She was really good at that part, by the way. I just made me think of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying. That we don't like to think of ourselves as the helpless little lamb.
No, and so we, as helpless little lammies, go out and fight the roaring lion on our own.
Yeah, even if we're the lamb with a Lamborghini and jewelry and money and da-da-da. Humility is being able to say, I have all this stuff, and that's just stuff.
Yeah.
I am still...
It does not make you who you are. It
Right.
does not make you a better person.
Yeah.
Though we like to think that it does.
Yeah, it dresses up, makes us... It does. Where's a brain chemical response? It makes us feel good with stuff. But humility is being able to say, no matter what is going on, this is who I am. And, you know, I need God.
Yeah. So about 10 years ago, I read the book, The Practice of the Presence of God by Brother Lawrence, who was a Carmelite friar in the 17th century. And he practiced basically the presence of God. And he like to be in the present, live as if he were in the presence of God at all times. Being able to ask for help and things like that. So he said that whether I'm in the kitchen, because he worked as a cook in the kitchen in his order there. So he says whether I'm in the kitchen or whether I am in the market shopping, I can be just as close to God in communion with him as during prayer time. And Brother Lawrence also said that the best way he had found to deepen a relationship with God was to do our common everyday business without any view of pleasing man and purely for the love that we have for God. And he also suggests that sanctification, our journey on the path of righteousness, is more about not so much changing our actions, but about changing why we do our actions. I think that's probably a little more for people who've gone to church their whole lives and who claim to be Christians, and we do good things, and yet we sometimes believe that doing good makes us good. And that is why he suggests that our sanctification isn't necessarily so much about changing our works, but about changing why we do them. Are we doing them to make ourselves look good, or are we doing it just purely because we simply love God?
That was interesting. We're over. There's these meetings going on over at the university, and we go over and take pictures and video for the conference. Just this thing we're doing to kind of help out. But I've been telling Aspen. Because the guy gets up and preaches, and he says, you know, and I'm just too old and cynical anymore, because I'm just sitting there going like, this is not your original thought. This is not your unique thought. We were doing this 10 years. He did one thing up front, and he's like, oh, I made this thing. And I was like, no, you didn't. We put it in the Bible curriculum 20 years ago. And one of the things came up today that if you haven't heard, I think everyone's already heard these things, and maybe, I guess they haven't. But it was a quote from St. Augustine, who said, love God and do as you please. And he was making a big, you know, sermon point off of it. And again, that's nothing new. I remember several, in fact, I think I did it once, way back in the day. And I actually took it for a little different ride than most pastors take it, because, you know, the idea, you know, if you love God, you're not going to do, you know, whatever you want to do. It doesn't make it. But I was like, yeah, love God and do as you please. Absolutely. And they're like, you know, and I was like, no, because if you truly love God, what pleases him is going to please you. And so you'll be doing the things that please God because they would please you as well. Because your motivation is from loving God. Mm-hmm. And when you're saying that, just made me think of that it's your motivation.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But Brett needs to remember that he knows a lot more.
I do, I guess.
Than other people. These people that are going to this seminar, basically,
yeah.
I mean, they're taking notes, and they're really getting something out of this weekend seminar that they're at.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Brett has gone to classes and all this kind of stuff. So. Yes.
And I've read these books, and I'm like, this was in, you know.
Yes, but other people, books. Not everybody has.
Not everybody, yeah.
Yes.
I'm gonna ask. I got a friend over there, Alan Martin. I'm gonna sit down with him. I was like, dude, is it just me? Am I just too old and cynical for this, or do you sit back and go, oh yeah, well, I've heard this? You know, it's probably true. Pastors.
Yeah, pastors
are probably the hardest audience to.
Right. I mean, and other people haven't received the same education. Certainly have received an education, mm-hmm. but not the same classes and such.
Or had the same experience.
Yeah.
A lot of this has been like focused towards, you know, you've been taught that it's righteousness by works and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm thinking, yeah, I mean, 50, 100 years ago, but I didn't have that experience growing up in the schools I went to and everything. But then I started thinking about regions of the country that are more conservative than others. And I think, I bet it is more, people have that more type of experience in ultra-conservative areas of the country.
Yeah, I mean, Aspen comes home from school, and certain kids are still being raised in that type of atmosphere. Not everyone, clearly. The majority of kids are not, but a handful of kids are.
Yeah, it used to be the standard kind of, that's how things were just, you know, and I just feel like that is not the case anymore. Now it's more of, not the norm. But, it's good. I keep telling myself, yep, there's people that need to hear this, people it's for them, and I'm just going to take pictures and video. And
Yes, that was his job.
that was my job.
Yes.
It was funny, somebody asked, like, they came up, somebody else with a camera, and they're like, so what are you doing? What are you, who are you shooting for, and everything. And I was like, I don't know, really. I'm shooting, I think, for the Texas conference, because it's really for this friend of mine who asked, and he's like, oh, do you have a team? And I was like, oh, yeah. Oh, where's your team? And Aspen was standing right there. I said, well, here's one. He didn't seem to believe you were old enough to be a media team.
Little did he know.
Little did he know. Yeah. We had all three of us there yesterday, and that's what I wish. I was like, yeah, here's my team right here. Anyway, back to topic.
Back on topic.
Motivation,
Okay.
why we do the things we do.
So Brother Lawrence said it was sad how many people felt obligated to doing certain works, which they performed very imperfectly because of their humanness, basically, or their selfish inclinations, basically. Well, in Luke 18, Jesus tells us a story, basically, of the Pharisee and the tax collector who were in the temple, and they were both praying. Both of them were doing the same thing. They were both praying.
That's a good example.
And yet the Pharisee was creating and making a long list of good things that he had done that proved that he was a good person.
Yeah.
And the tax collector just simply said, God have mercy on me, a sinner. That was a powerful, powerful prayer, because one, he recognized how helpless he was. He didn't claim any goodness at all. He wasn't claiming goodness. He recognized he was not good, and only God's mercy would save him. And so Jesus said that one went home justified, the other did not. And that one recognized his need for help, and the other did not.
Yeah, that's a good example of why you do the things you do, or, humility allows you to see your true condition, but it leads to peace. It leads to, absolution and peace.
Yeah.
Because then one went home
justified, yeah. And
One
the other
went
one
home.
didn't.
Yeah.
So basically, well, you can't say his humility justified him, but he was humble.
Yeah, and see, he has peace where the Pharisee is not going to have peace, because his moment's over.
Yeah, and well, not only that, yeah, he has to go out and keep doing in order to seek peace, which he isn't going to have, because he will never accumulate enough doing and having in order to be peaceful.
Yeah, it'll never be enough.
Because pride does not give us perfection, and it does not
it just drives you
ever
more and
give
more.
us peace. So, have you ever noticed that sometimes when you're praying, and I noticed this this last week, I've noticed it before, but anyways, have you ever noticed that when you're praying, sometimes it feels as though you're talking to a God who is outside of you in a realm, and we perceive him that way, right? Outside of us, who we kind of hope is hearing us at that moment. Now, granted, we know that God hears us, right? And yet, at the moment, sometimes it feels like the way I was talking to him, I'm acting as if I don't believe he's actually hearing me at the moment. So, Jesus says in Revelation that he stands at the door of our hearts and he knocks. He asks us to open the door so that he can come in and eat with us and drink with us. And when we invite him in, now he comes inside our heart and he lives inside our heart, right? Okay, so why do we talk to him as if he's on the outside of us? So I kind of got a different perception of this as I started to read through the book, The Practice of the Presence of God, again this last week. I read it about 10 years ago. I got it from the library, and so when I was done reading it, I returned it. And at that point in time, 10 years ago, you're kind of at a different place. But I got a basic concept of it, and I tried to put that into practice as well as I understood it at that point in time. Well, now as I was reading it again, I could see where I hadn't quite been on point like I, should have been. And so basically, if we see God as living in our hearts, that makes him more personable, if you will. He is right there. Take, for instance, we should speak to him more. Let's say I'm in my kitchen washing dishes, and instead of talking to him as if he is standing outside the front door, why don't I just talk to him as if he's sitting at the dinner table, right there, where I can see him and he can actually hear me, and we have a conversation, right? And so I suggest, I've kind of tried this week to do that. If I find myself leaning the other direction, I start talking to God as if he's right there in my heart, and it just feels more real that way.
I've done this.
Okay. And?
People looked at me weird. It's while I was driving. I heard it in a sermon somewhere. Somebody was talking about, and I talked to God, while I'm sitting at the traffic light. And I don't know why it stuck with me, so I did. I was like, just praying, and they're like, okay, God, well, I'm going to try this. So, I know you can hear me, and here's what I'm thinking, and da-da-da, and I just started. I wasn't asking for anything.
You were talking out loud.
I was talking out loud, and I was just like, and I tell you, as real as I'm sitting here, I remember that, and just going away, and of course there's nobody in the passenger, but in my head, that's how I'm treating. And I was right in mid-sentence of something, because I was just talking about people and driving, and I don't like to wait much. And I was talking about, man, this light is so long. Look at the guy, he's just sitting there. And I just remembered this whole, I could almost see Jesus sitting there and just turning and looking at me like, really? Did you just hear yourself? And it was of such that it caught me mid-prayer, and I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Sorry. I was like, but it was a real experience. I mean, I could just almost see just he's looking at me like, have I taught you nothing? And it was like, it was a real moment.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And we do need to treat God as if he is more literally actually in our presence, instead of like, we know that, but why don't we just actually treat him that way? Yeah. So, okay. Were you going to say something?
No.
Okay. So we don't have to think that we will ever run out of things to say to God, right? There is, all day long, we are going to have temptation. Believe it or not, we are tempted all day long. And so it is at that moment of temptation that it is our opportunity to ask God to fight for us rather than fighting for ourselves. And so, whether we are like Brother Lawrence, who practiced living in the presence of God, whether he was in the kitchen or at the marketplace, we too can practice the presence of God, whether we are, lawyers in our office, or changing tires at the tire shop, stocking shelves at the Dollar General, teaching students, putting the baby to sleep. All of these things can be done for God with love in our hearts. And should moments arise when we're irritated or we want to get even or anything like that, then there's our opportunity to go to God, who lives in our hearts because we invited him into our hearts, and just tell him, I need your help. I am helpless. I have no strength on my own, and yet you promise to fight the enemy for me. And okay, so over the years when I've been tempted, I have taken one of two approaches. Basically, the first, of course, every time I recognize, first of all, every time it is that I recognize, so sometimes we don't recognize it, sometimes we just don't recognize it at all until we are past it, and then we go, oh, oops, how did I end up in the mud pile again, right? But other times we do have the opportunity to know that we are headed that direction, and we can ask God for help, right? So the second approach, I would ask God for help, and He always helps when you ask, right? I've done that in different ways. Sometimes I say, I'm taking up the shield of faith, God, so that you can defend me, because He promises to defend us against the flaming arrows of the enemy, and or other times, whatever it may be at the moment, my visual for the moment. And now, of course, right now I could say, okay, Jesus, I need help. The enemy's roaring like a lion, and I can't defend myself against him, so I need you to go fight the enemy for me. So this week I noticed in particular that while I was approaching temptation in that manner and trying to keep more of a direct communication with God throughout the day, there were still times when I was gritting my teeth and saying no. And then grit my teeth and say no, and grit my teeth and say no, and grit my teeth and say no. Okay, and then all of a sudden I realized, wait a second, why am I doing this? Because, like first of all, you're like, well, how come I don't have peace? Because I have been getting peace when I just say, hey, God, I need help. I need you to fight the enemy for me because I cannot fight the enemy for myself. And then I have peace. And yet when I wondered, how come I'm not having peace? Because I'm saying no. I'm saying no, and I'm saying no. And yet I'm gritting my teeth and I'm saying no. I am trying to fight on my own, and that will never give me peace, ever. And so I'm hoping I remember that because we don't always remember that. It's like our first line of defense for ourselves is we think we need to run out and fight for ourselves, even though it makes absolutely no sense for a little lamb to run out and fight the lion. It makes no sense. It's certain destruction, but we at that moment see it really same way Eve saw the temptation to eat the fruit. It was certain destruction, but she was led to believe that this was going to be a good thing for her. So let me see. You know what? That is where I was ending it.
Oh.
Yes, my story of how this lived out in practical living, and there will be times we forget. There will be times our mind wanders. The guy, Brother Lawrence, in the book said that, and yet he would just come back and tell God, well, you know what? Here I am, and I'm a human, and that's all you can expect from me. But I am back. I'm sorry, and I'm here for you to help me. And God, what was it I said in Sabbath school today? God, over the long term of our lives, He is far more concerned with living out His love towards us than He is about our obedience to Him, basically. He's not there constantly exacting our obedience. If you look back over your life of serving God, He's been there loving you all those years. That's what He's been doing, is loving you all of those years. Yeah. So, and all He wants in return for that then, of course, which is all He wants, but He wants us to love Him back. What you were talking about.
What was I talking? Oh, you're talking about the stories we were talking about?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's for another time. We decided after Sabbath school today we were going to...
Yeah, we managed to come up with next week's salt while we were in Sabbath school.
Yeah.
So, yes, got a head start this week, and it's a good thing.
Stories, but it relates to what you were just saying.
Yes, so basically pride has no perfection. Therefore, it requires us to live out our own perfection. Humility, on the other hand, is the ultimate in perfection.
Yeah. I guess you could say pride and self could be the synonymous.
Yeah.
Relying on myself to do means I'm constantly having to do more to do, I'm never going to get perfection because I'm never going to be good enough because myself is the motivation. But humility is like, wait, no, I can't do that, and God can only do that, and so now I'm in a place of peace because all I can do is
rely on God. Yeah, and He loves to show up for us. He loves to deliver us from the enemy. It's what He is there for. It's why why Jesus died on the cross so that he could do that for us.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah. And so it's not really a part 2, but there's things we're going to talk about next week that relate to where we're ending right now.
More stories.
Yeah, more stories.
Yes, Brett will tell a longer story.
Yep.
Yes.
From my life, which always seems to be a source of entertainment for the masses. So be sure to tune in for that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, and hope you've been having a good weekend and a good Sabbath.